Good morning. For Mental Health Awareness Week, I thought I'd take a break from talking about just teaching maths and talk about an issue that I think is fundamental to the journeys of all teachers. If it hasn't been for you yet as a teacher, then it probably will be one day. And maybe if you manage to coast through life without experiencing stress and anxiety, then I'm sure you're surrounded by people who are experiencing it and you'd like to know how to help. So when I run teacher training, teacher professional development, it's almost like when you're teaching a class of children, if a child in front of you is struggling with profound issues that they can't cope with, then they can't learn maths. Sometimes you just have to deal with the issues first. And I find that in the teachers that I'm working with from time to time, I'm watching them. There are people who aren't properly engaged. I chat to them at break, and suddenly you realise that they are dealing with the most profound issues, and you have to deal with those first. I'm going to talk about, if you're watching this video and you're struggling with stress, wanted to start by sending you lots of love. I hope you're going to find it useful. I've prepared it. There's a lot of stuff in it that comes from personal experience. I am struggling with stress and anxiety just now, so a lot of this is very fresh in my mind with some new perspectives because I've been having some counselling. So I hope you'll find it useful. I'm going to address a couple of things first. A couple of key things. One is the kind of situation in which you're struggling with stress and you don't really know why. There are usually underlying causes when people are struggling with stress. And part of the problem is often that you don't know what they are. And you're going around in circles and you see yourself as just being someone who's a stressaholic. So we need to puzzle out how to delve into the issues behind that. And I'll give you some advice on that. And then there are situations where you know what's causing you stress, so you just need advice to deal with the stress, and I'll try and give you some of that as well. Thanks. Hello. If you've got any questions about maths education, I will take those as well, or any questions about teacher mental health or anything like that, which I'm focusing on today. I do want to emphasise before I begin, I think that experiencing stress and learning to deal with it is one of the most... Hi, Helen. Is one of the most positive things you can do in life and as a teacher. As you engage with the issues that cause stress and you learn to conquer it and accept it as part of reality, it's a wonderful journey, a really, really positive thing. So, and I'll come back to that at the end and contextualise it in what I've said. So let's get started with the kinds of situations where you don't really know what the stress and anxiety is about. And that's where the mug comes in. The key thing is that you need to talk to people until you get to a point in time where you and the person that you're talking to are able to clearly articulate what's wrong in your life and what needs to change. Just going to pause there. You need to be able to say out loud what's wrong, and often it's a long journey to get there. The underlying problem might be, I've made a list here, you might be being bullied in school. You might not be coping with your teaching, perhaps because of behaviour issues. You might be experiencing problems with your key personal relationship at home. You might have health issues. You might have extreme family issues that are just overwhelming. You might be struggling with financial issues. You might be struggling with addiction. And the trickiest of all is the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. We all go through training on recognising them and dealing with them in children. We need support to deal with them as teachers, as adults, as human beings too. But when the issues really go back years, into your childhood, it can take a heck of a long time to puzzle out what they are. They might even be things that you don't remember. So, yeah. Oh, this all comes from personal experience, Helen. I've been in all these situations, all of them, I think. There might have been something in the list here. Oh, I don't think I've really dealt with addiction. Maybe that's still to come. And I don't think I've really dealt with personal bullying either, but I've been in work situations that are profoundly bullying because the culture of the school has changed and I am not comfortable teaching in the way that I've now then been needed to teach. So it's a bullying situation rather than personal bullying. But the rest of it, I've been there. And in some cases, I am there right now. So you need to talk to people and you need to make time to do that. It might be about time with friends. The person who's going to help you might be your union rep. It's really, really good to talk to your union if you're struggling in any way. They've got all sorts of stress support services. It might be your doctor. I think time for a little story. I first struggled with depression when I was 23. And I'm talking about this coming to awareness because that was not offered then. I went to my doctor and he said, right, you're someone who experiences depression, you need tablets. And when they didn't work, he gave me stronger tablets, and so it continued and things escalated out of control. And I got really ill, and it took me a long time, probably a year, to actually deal with that because I'd got the wrong help. I needed someone actually to sit down with me and say, blimey, what's going on in your life? You can't deal with that. You need to extract yourself from this situation. It didn't happen. But years later, I was struggling with depression after my son was born, and I went to my doctor and she said, just tell me what's going on in your life. And I talked about it. I'd not been able to talk about a lot of things that were going on at home because for various reasons my husband had said that I couldn't, and that seemed logical. But I talked to my doctor and she listened. And at the end of the conversation, she says, I don't think you need antidepressants. I think you need to face the fact that your marriage is probably over. And she was right. And from then on, I had a clear image in my head of what was going on and what I needed to do. So I knew that I needed to start to recognise that my marriage might be over and to start to draw boundaries and to see what happened when I drew boundaries. So if you're someone who's struggling with stress and anxiety, you need to make time to talk to friends, union reps, doctors. You may need counselling, colleagues. And, you know, as I've said in professional development about teaching maths, it's not always just been about that. If sometimes, you know, I had a teacher who was clearly in a very vulnerable situation at home, a safeguarding situation at home. And the day out at the conference that I was running was her opportunity to be out of that situation and to talk to someone and to get help. And we needed to get her help on the ground during that day. And in another situation, I just listened to a teacher at break and she started talking about how both her parents are struggling with dementia and she had a child who was really ill. And I just stood back and said, look, you cannot deal with this. You can't teach brilliantly because you're totally overwhelmed with all these issues that are closing in on you and you're not able to deal with them properly because you're too tired and too stressed. So you actually need to go home and get some sleep. And she said, yeah, people have been telling me that, but I just can't. And we really needed to work through that during the day. And we did. And she needed some time out of school and her colleagues were desperate to help and desperate to cover her. They often are, because she was someone who always looked after them but didn't know how to ask for help. So there needs to be a journey of coming to awareness of what the causes of your stresses are. In the meantime, you might need some help with the symptoms of stress and anxiety while you get from day to day to take that journey with coming to an awareness. But I wanted to put that first because it's so essential, and because in my personal experience, if you just, I'll answer that in a second, if you just focus on the symptoms and not the causes, things can go very, very wrong, especially if people start treating you with chemical drugs. I've never been a head teacher. I've always wanted to be a specialist in maths education. And so I was a head of maths in secondary, and then I went to lecture in maths education, Helen. And I've decided to stay that way. I don't want to be a head teacher. I don't want to be a leader in general education, a specialist in maths education. But I've also been a county councillor until recently, and I've done a few other jobs as well along the way. Right, so how do we treat the symptoms of stress? Because whether or not you've got an awareness, so I just wanted to run through some of the options. First one is cup of tea with a good friend, someone who's got a lot of life experience who you trust. Make time for that if you possibly can. If you don't have someone like that, put all your effort into getting a good counsellor, some good counselling sessions. You know, someone might say to you, I can see you're stressed, I want to help. If you're broke and you've got no money, say, could you help me fund some counselling sessions if you can't get them promptly on the NHS? There is a lot available just now, even when it seems to be so overloaded due to COVID. And I was referred for counselling through the NHS a few weeks ago, and I'm already getting it, and it is brilliant. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. There are also some apps. There is Mindshift CBT. Let's just look at a few of these logos. That's the logo for the Mindshift app. That is free, and that's like instant rescue. And then the other one is Headspace, and that is really good for a longer term commitment to app-based counselling. These are both ones I've had recommended from quite a few people. I'm not using them just now because I'm getting live counselling. The Headspace, I've been told, is really brilliant if effectively your life has collapsed and you're going through a substantial life change that you didn't want. You is not welcome, but you've got to go through it. And you can get a free trial, but really it's about £50, so about $60 for a year's subscription. That's the kind of investment you need to make to that app and commit to it for a long time. So if you get live counselling through the NHS or through your doctor or whatever, they will do an assessment on you and try and get you some counselling that's exactly right for you. I'm getting CBT for stress and anxiety. I'm a huge fan of counselling. It's been amazing in my life. When I struggled with depression at the age of 23, I got mood-based CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, learning to recognise my mood and work with it. That was a godsend. When my first marriage collapsed, I got Relate marriage guidance counselling, and that was transformative in my life because I then made a much better marriage, which has been a joy. And now I'm getting this counselling for stress and anxiety. So the first thing, I'll just highlight some of the key things I've been taught. One is that it's normal to be stressed and anxious if you're dealing with situations, and you mustn't worry about being stressed and anxious. It's an ordinary part of life. Just gently try and apply some of the techniques, and again, don't worry too much if they don't work immediately. But different people find different things helpful, so if you don't find this helpful, there will be something for you. I don't find the breathing particularly helpful. Most people find that really helpful. There's lots of advice on breathing. But what I have found helpful is the feet flat on the floor, sitting up straight, tuning into the sounds around you. What can you hear that you didn't hear before? Looking around your room and noticing some things that you didn't see in the room around you before. Trying to tune in to your senses of taste and smell, and if you can use a good aroma in your context, a candle or some essential oil or something like that, that's really good. and I've used that again and again just as a short thing just now, tend to find it calms down my anxiety and it makes me cry, which is much healthier than just spiraling with anxiety for me just now, because I'm dealing with a lot. There was something else I wanted to recommend before I finish. This is a mental health group that I've worked with. I had an absolute privilege to work with. If you Google Ewanrig, we will, and scroll down the page, there are some videos made by teenagers, for teenagers, about mental health, but they're brilliant for adults as well. It's just giving everyone the confidence to sit down and have a cup of tea and talk to people, talk to each other. If you're struggling, to ask. If you're watching someone who's struggling, to help, by just listening and helping people come to awareness of what's wrong with them, what's wrong in their lives, what needs to change. It's not your job to deal with to fix someone's stress and anxiety. It's your job to be a friend, to have conversations with them that might help them come to awareness and might give them a few pointers, to the extent that you can. A lot of people are afraid to ask, afraid to try, and it's really quite simple to do. It's just about the cup of tea, the hug-a-mug. And it's quite shocking when you go to mental health first aid training. I wouldn't recommend you would have the confidence or to do this unless it's really helpful to go through this training for me, because it talked to ask about suicidal inclinations in situations where you think people might have them, because they're just going through so much. And it teaches you that the research shows that everyone thinks that talking about it makes it more likely to be an issue, and it doesn't. It goes the other way. So you're worried that by raising it, you're starting a thought train, but you're not. It's a pragmatic conversation. It normalizes it, which is really helpful. And of course, if you are struggling with suicidal inclinations, or you find someone who is, you should ask for help, because you need to be with the specialist counselling and support. I have struggled with depression in my life, and sometimes that's just been seeing my GP and staying in touch with them and having regular appointments every 2 weeks for a while, just to check in and have a structure for dealing with that. Things like that have been transformative for me, but there needs to be something. I can see quite a few people are watching. If you've got any questions, please post them now, because I am coming towards the end of this live stream. I will take questions about maths education as well, of course, as I always do. The thing that I want to conclude with is that insight that when you take time out, to deal with these issues, it is not time wasted. This is the most important thing you can do with your life. It doesn't feel like it at the time. It feels like an intrusion. It's getting in the way of all the other things you want to do. It isn't. It really isn't. I'm looking back over nearly 3 decades of these struggles now, and I wouldn't change any of them, because they have taught me more about life, and they've given me more skills in helping people, and I've been able to do much more good in the world because I've been through them. So don't run away from them. You may have to put them on hold for a while just to get through a few weeks until you can make space and time to deal with them, but make that space and time. Maths question: how do you help a child in classroom age 5 who doesn't understand maths and is too nervous to try? I've got the key thing is, if you go back to the beginning of my reception class series, it talks about cardinal and ordinal number, and some of these children have not got a clear understanding that 4 is 4 objects there. They've seen it as being this. Yep, this session's being recorded, and I'll publish it shortly. So while some children have been flying ahead with numbers, some children have had no idea what's been going on. And even if they can see this now, then they've lost their confidence and they're miles behind because they've missed everything else because they didn't see it at the time. So even by the age of 5, children can have huge, huge barriers to learning. So the first thing you need to do is, thank you. The first thing you need to do is check that they have now got a good understanding of cardinal number. Send them to a box of things. Can they get 1, 2, 3 objects? If they can, then they are now ready to learn with concrete apparatus. But you may need to go right back to basics. So watch the reception class series. If you go to playlists, you'll be able to find that series so you can see what those basics are and just work through them. And that child is going to have to work when you're teaching. The current curriculum is all got to be with concrete apparatus. Everything has got to be multisensorial, touchy-feely, and that child should be able to engage it with that now if they've got that understanding of number now. So it'll heal from both ends. They'll be able to engage with your current classroom environment and that you'll be catching them up and just filling in the gaps at the same time. So if the child is 5, then I'm guessing they're end of reception class, but they might be year 1. So the year 1 training that I've got that child should be able to access all of that if they've got the cardinality of number and if they've got a reasonable understanding of the numbers up to 10 and can work with them. And if they haven't got that, you need the reception class series. And if they have, you can pretty much go straight into year 1, but give them some cuddles. The other thing to do with them is to play lots of games like these and try and get their parents playing them with them as well. Ladybirds is the other one that I grab. Ladybirds and spotty dogs because it's such fun. And their number is going to come on really quickly and fly if they're doing that. And it's a really healing thing to be doing with the family. It's just a sort of 5-minute, 10-minute game. Sometimes you can get the after-school club if the child goes to after-school club to play with them. Or maybe there's a big brother or sister in the school who would take the time to play with their little brother or sister. So there's some pointers to get you going. And I'm here every Sunday at 9 o'clock if you want to come chat. Or you can post questions in response to my videos on YouTube. Okay, unless any other questions come in now, I'm going to stop now. After bye, Spotty Dogs. Cool. Spotty Dogs has got numbers to read in it. If they're not confident reading these digits, then Ladybirds is the same game effectively, but it doesn't have those. It's all actual spots. So that's the key difference between the two. But Spotty Dogs is just gorgeous. They're going to fly. Games break barriers to learning so fast. So I have not managed to edit and publish a formal video this week. That's because I've been struggling. It happens. You know, sometimes you just can't be the person that you would like to be. But be reassured, you are learning stuff that really matters if you're in that place just now. Pigeon just landed on the roof. Okay, have a good Sunday.